gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors, episode 455.
Woo!
As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by viable human Chris Saturn.
Hi, Justin.
Hi, Saturn. 2 episodes ago, I checked. I did indeed call you Resident Old Bastard again.
That's fine.
Like our old intro. And so I guess we're going to have to dub it.
Fairness,
I don't know what else to do.
No, in fairness, I am older than I've ever been.
I don't know why that just feels like a really bad George Carlin joke. Just, I'm older than I've ever been. This feels very on brand.
Yeah.
For housekeeping, I day before yesterday had relatively intensive hand surgery.
Yeah.
On one of my fingers, I had a mass removed from it.
How's that affecting your side hustle hand job business?
It's not, well, I can only do half as many now because one of my hands is in a splint.
Man.
So it
How are you going to pay for the surgery?
It cut it right in half. My customers are pissed.
The meds didn't slow you down at all.
So I'm still, it was day before yesterday, so I'm still very much in recovery and dealing with that. So if tonight's weirdly low energy or the shows are short or whatever, then that's what's going on. Also, the night that I was home with surgery, my kid got the stomach flu. And so she's had the stomach flu since I've got my surgery. And also this morning I had to take one of our pet rats in to get a major tumor removal. So we've been dealing with her being in recovery. And she has a teeny tiny little rat-sized cone on her head, which is the most adorable thing in the world.
It is pretty adorable.
But rats, much like raccoons, have little hands. And so it just grabs the edge of it and starts yanking on it really hard.
Nice.
And about yanks herself over. And so all this is going on. And my wife is also on super overtime at work because the CFO at her company quit and she's the only accountant left.
And it's year end and...
Yeah, it's also year end. I'll just be downstairs and I'll just hear her up here cussing. Like I won't see her for hours, and I see her in 3 states. She's either eating food, like in the pantry eating, laying in the bed face down, or is upstairs cussing at the computer. Those are her 3 states right now.
That's all reasonable.
So I'm trying to hold everything together one-handed with a sick kid that's barfing and fevery, and it's just, it's been... there was question about whether or not we'd even be recording tonight, because last night I was feeling kind of not good, and I was like, I might be getting the stomach flu. And so that's what's going on with me.
Yeah, it sucks.
I suspect, my suspicion is this, if I could make a prediction, I predict this episode, 455, will be pretty normal, and I predict that next episode is going to be weird and possibly short. So
it's a weird topic too, so it's fine.
Yeah, just to temper everyone's expectations. Episode 456 is entitled "The Best Games to Play with One Hand." Thankfully, it's my left hand and I'm right-handed, so that is the one saving grace.
Yeah, so you can play all your hentai games.
Yeah, they did. It did end up being a little more intensive than they thought. So I think I ended up getting a little more splinted up than they were originally going for. But I didn't know that they really do this. The doctor does indeed come in there with a marker and starts drawing on you. He's like, I'm going to cut you here, and I'm going to cut you here, and I'm going to cut all the way around here, and then flip this open. I didn't know that. I thought that was like a cartoon thing, or like a TV. No, they really do that. It was on my little finger, my pinky finger, so he had a tiny little baby marker. It was like a little tiny fine point, so he could fit it all in there.
Nice.
And he did, in fact, marker all over me. And then, of course, in my head, I was like, when he cuts me, does some of the marker go into my body maybe a little bit? Or do you think they wipe that off? Because it wasn't like, it was just a Sharpie. It was a fine point. It wasn't like a medical marker. It was just like a regular purple marker.
Well, they're non-toxic, though.
Yeah, but I don't think it's supposed to go in you still. I still don't think that's a good idea.
You can't tell people that Sharpies aren't supposed to go in you. There's a whole subreddit about this.
So, off to a weird start already. It's been an extremely bizarre and stressful week for me. So, this is like, these shows are the last thing I need to get done this week, and then I'm just checked out for the next 4 or 5 days. So I'm very excited to I don't want to say excited to get this over with, because obviously we enjoy doing the show, but I'm a little excited to have it behind me.
Yeah, to be able to rest.
I have been playing Pokemon cards.
Okay. Physical
My-
or the Game Boy game?
All of it.
Okay.
So my daughter, I play a lot of card games, and she's just, as a kid, interested in card games because they're cool and they're collectible, and some of them are shiny and whatever. So I had been kind of searching for a card game she could play.
Okay.
And what she really wanted to play was the Digimon card game, which I find to be much more engaging and tactical and strategic and enjoyable than the Pokemon card game.
That's why I sold better, right?
Yeah. But it's also a much harder game because in Digimon, you're dealing with having multiple of your monsters on the field at once, all attacking and defending. And it's just the actual combat math of the game gets kind of complicated. And so I was like, well, I can show you how to play Pokemon. Like, I don't remember how to play it, but I remember it being way easier. And so we sat down and she really super took to it.
Nice.
And so I was like, all right, well, we'll go buy a couple decks because they still make theme decks, which are just like pre-made. You play them out of the box, Pokemon decks.
Okay.
And I told her, I was like, if you play with me every day after school, then we can get you like, we can, this can be a thing. We'll start, picking up decks and cards, and you can kind of, because a lot of her friends at school collect Pokemon cards.
That's good.
It's still very popular in the like 8 to 12-year-old category.
Yeah.
And so she started playing with me, and she was doing really good and enjoying it. And so I started buying some of the cards. And then, of course, I need cards to play against her with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a couple of old decks from like years and years and years ago, and they're so terrible that like everything she has just immediately steamrolls it to the point that I can't even really show her how the game works because like I'm just over there like, I take another turn and do nothing and pass the turn to you. It's just nothing to I can't even teach her, right?
Nice.
So I buy a couple decks. So then we end up with like 4 or 5 decks. Now she's got a bunch of packs of cards from just being at the grocery store. Like, I want a pack of Digimon cards. I want a pack of these Pokemon cards. And they're like $3, so whatever. And she's like, well, I want to trade cards. So I'm like, well, all right, I'll go buy myself some packs to trade so that I'll have some cards to trade with you, because she just likes the kid thing of like, let's lay out all of our cards in a circle around us, sitting cross-legged on the floor and trade them. And then that happened, and all the packs come with these little codes to redeem the packs and the decks in the app. And so I'm like, well, we might as well. So I download the app on both her phones. I make her a child account on the Pokemon website.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey, here's the app because it knows how to play better than I do. I don't know all the fancy rules yet. There's some kind of weird stuff in the game. And I'm like, I'm not sure. We're just going to wing it. And so I show her the app and we redeem her stuff. And I'm like, this is how you play against the computer, which they really bury in the app. They really want you playing against people. And I'm like, she's 8.
Right.
And she did it once and then just starts playing against people.
Yeah.
And winning. And so at this point, I've got the app on my phone. We're redeeming digital packs. I'm buying decks, and I'm playing every day.
Huh.
And I'm like, shit, I think I'm into this. Like, I wasn't planning on it, but I think that just like I just kind of have fallen into, it's a very complete ecosystem. Like, doesn't really matter where you buy in at, you end up, all paths lead to Pokemon. Right?
They want you in the hobby, so they're going to do everything they can to accommodate that.
It's nice, though, because like other trading card games like Magic the Gathering, they have an app. If you buy a Magic the Gathering pack, they don't give you a code to redeem a pack in the game.
No.
They're like, no, you fucking buy the pack in the game, you piece of shit. Like, that's what they... I mean, maybe they do now. I haven't bought Magic packs in years, so maybe they do. They should. But yeah, it's very... The ecosystem, like, it sucks you right in.
Yeah, I like that you accidentally ended up with a new hobby and you turned your daughter into a card hustler.
Yeah. She opened... I bought her packs at the grocery store, and she opened like a $35, $40 card, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. She lost her mind. She was so excited. I was like, that's the best, they call them ace spec cards, and it's like the new thing in the new set, and they're all pink and cool looking.
Yeah.
And so then I'm going to get my surgery, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to play one-handed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still kind of shaky on the Pokemon TCG rules, and I remember there's the Game Boy Color game.
Right.
And in my head, I was like, I wonder how accurate to the card game it is. Turns out, pretty damn accurate. It's a little different, but it's accurate enough that you can kind of build some fundamentals playing it. And on my Mii U Mini, it's small enough that I can use it with only my right hand. I can just reach my thumb across all the D-pad and face buttons at the same time with it cradled in my fingers.
Because you have giant gorilla hands?
Yeah, so now I'm playing the Pokemon TCG on Game Boy Color on my Mii U Mini because it's slow, it's turn-based, it's, it works great. And it's something I can kind of like be in the middle of a battle, put it down, go deal with a sick kid, come back, and not really be like too worried about where I was because it's just a card game.
Right.
It's so like, let me say, most importantly, I don't super love the Pokemon card game. It's like in the realm of card games, there's a lot I like better than it. It's not incredible to me. It's fun, it's like a fun little thing. It's fun enough. But yeah, here I am, like steeped in it now for like a week and a half, not completely unintentionally. And it just keeps getting worse. So every year, Pokemon releases whatever the top four World Championship decks were at their like TCG World Championship game. They release a special version of those with different backs, and they're super cheap. It's like $10, you get a World Championship level deck. Now, normally those decks would cost you hundreds of dollars because they have all the good cards in them.
Right.
But since they changed the back, they're not, in air quotes, official, so they sell for like $10. So my mom bought my daughter one of those. And the thing about World Championship level decks is they play very different from like the normal kitchen table crap we're playing.
Yeah.
So then that gets into the realm of my kid's like, I really like this deck and the Pokemon in it, but I can't play it because it's really hard and complicated. And so I'm like, all right, well, they sell a not World Championship version of that deck. So then I'm buying more. It's like, I don't know what happened to all my money. It all just went away. Pokemon just ate it. It just disappeared. So anyway, I will say, as someone who likes trading cards, they've got some really, really cool treatments on these cards. Like the different, they do like texture foiling. So like your card will be all shiny, but then the shiny is actually little punched out shiny stars all over it. And it's got like a swirly physical texture. They're doing crazy shit with these cards. Like I open a lot of card packs. If there's one thing I know, it's cards. And they are doing some insane shit with these Pokemon cards. I don't know how I'm like, this is insane. How come other card games aren't doing this? This is like you take the card out and you're like, whoa, my God. And it's worth 2 cents. And you're like, I don't understand this. This is the most insane card I've ever seen in my life. And it's like textured and bumpy and sparkly and it's got stars punched all over it. Yeah. It's wild. It's come a long way since I last checked in on it in 1999. When I was buying packs then.
There's a dude at my office who has some sort of printer, sticker maker, something where you can make holofoil stickers.
Okay, yeah.
And he keeps making people holofoil Pokemon card stickers to put on their laptops. So all over the building at work, we keep seeing laptops with Pokemon card stickers on the lid.
Yeah, I did learn this. I was trying to figure out, because they release like 1 million products a year.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out, like, what should I be buying? Because we just want to play on our kitchen table. We're not trying to go to an event or anything.
Right.
And so, like, I'm just trying to understand the product SKUs. And so I go on, like, the Pokemon TCG subreddit, and I'm like, literally no one is talking about playing the game. And finally I'm like Googling, like, why does no one play Pokemon? And it turns out that it's just commonly accepted that 99.999% of people into Pokemon cards never play the game ever.
Okay.
And I was like, that's insane to me. I counted 6 Pokemon subreddits today just about opening packs. And there is one that I could find about playing the game. Because I just want to talk to people that are like, oh, if you just want to play, get this thing. This is the best thing to play with. It's wild, man. It's very wild.
It's just teeny tiny art collections.
I mean, sure. Like there's all in TCGs have always had people that all they do is collect them.
Right.
But usually it's like they're a subset. For it to be basically everyone is crazy to me.
It didn't.
That's just
didn't
very
they used
wild.
to use the phrase CCG instead of TCG?
Yeah, I don't. I one time I looked up what the difference was, and the answer was none. It's
because I thought they used to call them collectible card games.
CCG was in the late 90s the more common nomenclature. But these days TCG has taken over.
I see.
I don't know why. I don't know when that switch flipped.
Yeah.
But like even Pokemon, they call it officially on the Pokemon website. It's called the Pokemon TCG.
I see.
So that one may have always been that way. But yeah, CCG was often used more, and then for many, many years interchangeably.
Yeah.
And I think TCG solidified. Now we're just getting into card game history. Probably solidified around the time that LCGs came out, which are living card games. Those are card games where when you buy, so you know how Pokemon, they're like, here's the new booster set, and you got to buy all these cards to randomly, hopefully, maybe get them all. Living card games, when the new set comes out, you buy a box and it comes with maximum playable copies of every card in the whole set. So there's no collecting. You just buy the new expansion and you have all of the cards from it.
And also you have to kill them before you can play it.
Right, obviously. Yeah. It's a Highlanders type situation. There can only be one. Anyway, hi Saturn. What do you do?
What do I do? No, So when I was looking around on my Xbox, for some reason, I just opened the store, which I never do. I never look at the marketplaces on any of my consoles or Steam unless I know what I'm going after. Because
I browse them all the time. I'm like, what's on sale? What could I waste money on?
See, I never do that just because most of the stuff that it recommends to me is things that I don't care about. Because I've been
you don't want more FIFA packs for FIFA 2024?
I have been so far out of the key demographic for so long that I have never enjoyed digital storefronts. Yeah. But I happened to be looking through it for some reason, and in the new releases was a collection of the Super NES Top Gear games.
Okay.
Which I had no idea that those were re-released. I thought that was that one racing game that I liked that no one else remembered.
Okay.
So I picked it up because it was like $10 or $15.
Isn't there a TV show called Top Gear?
There is. So
you put Top Gear in the notes, and I was like, Saturn's watching fucking Top Gear? What is happening?
No. So the collection, because of the TV show, doesn't call the games Top Gear, even though that was their name. It calls them Top Racer.
I see.
So it's called the Top Racer collection.
Yeah.
But no, in Japan, apparently the first two games were already called Top Racer, but everywhere else in the world, they were called Top Gear back in the day. But I guess Kemco stopped renewing that copyright, and then the TV show started, and then it became too expensive to renew.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And what was weird about it was, one, there's no Kemco logo anywhere on this product. So I guess Kemco sold off these games so that they could keep making weird mobile RPG Maker games.
Yeah.
And also, the first logo that comes up when you start the game is Bleem.
Oh, like Bleem the emulator company?
Yes.
All right.
Apparently, they are who made the Super NES emulator that this collection uses.
I see.
Which is weird.
That is quite weird, yes.
But it is...
I concur.
Also, there, in addition to the 3 Super NES games in the collection, which are all, faithfully there... it also has a new arrange mode, which is just different tracks from the 3 different games mixed up. And you can play as these different Brazilian race cars.
Okay.
And I was curious why in a game that was always kind of Japan-centric, US-centric, that it's all Brazilian-themed in this collection. And I looked it up, and apparently it has been one of the top-selling and most beloved racing games in Brazil for decades.
Oh, Brazil, always with the weird out of pocket, like retro game obsessions. I love how odd things ended up in that market.
Right. So I have been enjoying. I've been enjoying going back to Top Gear and seeing if my remembered ability in the game is accurate, which it's not. I'm nowhere near as good as I thought I was. But no, it's fun. Also, I caught back up on Vampire Survivors with the new expansion, which is nice.
Still behind. I'm still behind. I need to get up. I need to get caught up myself.
That's good. Not expansion. The new update patch is what they added. So that's good. And then more Balatro. I had gotten kind of to the point on my Xbox where I felt like anything else that I could unlock would have been 100% luck based. Because it was all things that just required the perfect draw, right? And so I started playing it on my PC, and I thought, well, I'm going to use Cheat Engine and see how stupid this game can get.
As far as I can tell, it gets infinitely stupid.
That's literally correct, because once you get up to like the 38th or 39th ante, the amount that it wants you to beat is infinity.
I've been very greatly enjoying super slow rolling Balatro, but still having a good time with it.
Well, I did have.
It's interesting to know that there's no cap.
Right. I did go back to the Xbox version again just because I was killing some time, and I got an excellent hand. Ended up at like the 19th or 20th ante by the time I failed out, and I've discovered my new favorite jokers are the bull and the boot.
The bull that goes by how many
money you have.
Your money, yeah, like doubles your money, and that's how many extra
chips you get.
Chips you get. Yeah.
And then
I play the bull a lot. Yeah.
And then the boot gives you 3 more multiplier for every $5 you have.
I have been trying as hard as I could to avoid all strategy of the game. But in reading some news thing, I did see a comment where people were talking about the infinitely scalable jokers, and there is a selection of them that people have recognized that like these ones scale infinitely.
I see.
So they are the ones to get. Of course, I've not run into any of the ones they mentioned, and now I've forgotten which ones they were.
Yeah, I'm just playing as I go. I'm not looking anything up on the game. I'm just seeing what lands in my lap. But it's still fun. I'm still enjoying it. And also, exciting news for me anyway is I finally figured out how to get my WWAN card to work on my laptop in Linux. So now I have erased Windows off of my laptop. It is a 100% pure Linux machine.
You did it, Saturn.
Oh, it was
the
so
year
rewarding.
of the Linux desktop.
All right. And so it was, so I was trying to figure out how to get my WWAN card to work, which for people who are not network experts, WWAN is wireless wide area network. And
it's a SIM card.
Basically, yeah. A wide area network is a direct internet connection, whereas a local area network is all your different computers talking to each other. So a WWAN is direct internet connection through wireless, which is mobile. And so I had been hunting down how to get this to work for years now, and since I got my laptop, so almost 2 years. And I finally found one forum with a guy having the exact same problem I'm having, which there's always at least one forum somewhere in the world with someone having the exact same problem.
From 2004 of a guy running Fedora 3 with his own like custom desktop environment.
Yeah. and then there's going to be a response that says, thanks, that fixed it, but it's referencing a post that was deleted.
Yeah, of course.
However, in this situation, it was somebody who had the exact same mobile chipset I have, which only came out in 2022. So this is a very recent post. And somebody was like, I can't get this to connect. Exact same error message I'm having. And somebody else said, you need to do the FCC unlock and listed some information. And apparently, by default, because the encryption protocols that mobile carriers use to talk to wireless radio waves is all FCC regulated, that isn't open source. So by default, Linux locks that, and you have to type in a command to unlock that so that you can use that encryption protocol. So I did that, and that didn't do anything. But when I was looking up information about that, somebody was like, oh, you need to... I don't remember what they said the next step was, but there was some other step, and that led to another step, and that led to another step. And finally, I found the thing that actually fixed it.
Yeah.
And now it connects to my mobile Wi-Fi or my mobile internet.
You did it, Saturn.
That's so nice. And since I did, I installed some games on there. And every other time I've installed Linux, aside from the Steam Deck, I've had just terrible luck with games.
You have. You really have.
And this time, everything is just working. Lutris worked. Play on Linux worked. I've been able to get SimCity and StarCraft and
now, to be fair, a lot of times when you're complaining about Linux compatibility, you're like, this one weird PC port of a niche Japanese RPG from 2003 doesn't work right. And I'm like, I know it doesn't, Saturn. Of course it fucking does.
Even those are working now.
In defense of Linux here.
Right. But I think the release of the Steam Deck a couple of years ago has...
really jump-started.
Yeah, it's really accelerated the movement towards making games more compatible in Linux.
Definitely.
And I appreciate that effort, and it is clearly paying off.
Yeah. Let's do the news.
Yes, sir.
First up, early Atari veteran and Pong creator Al Alcorn has been auctioning off several early gaming prototypes.
And they look really
which
neat.
has been neat to see going down. So hopefully some of that goes into the hands of people who will make it available to preservationists that want to document it and
or
take
to
pictures
museums
and
or
stuff.
something.
Yeah. I imagine it's just going to end up flipped on eBay in like 10 years.
I think
fully
some of it
graded
has
Pong prototype encased in acrylic.
Right.
You know,
I think some of it has been grabbed by museums and stuff, and a lot of it is not like particularly interesting prototypes. Like there's little what looked like a handheld solitaire game was one of the things that he had. You know, it's just weird, early, goofy, electronic-y stuff, and I'm all for it.
Yeah. Nintendo is continuing to go after Git repositories for Switch circumvention tools and emulators, including Yuzu Fork Suyu, because apparently people don't even want to let the dust settle before they immediately start forking the project.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, we all know this is going to happen, but give it a fucking minute.
Yeah.
Give it a minute. Can you give it a minute?
And I like how these geniuses intentionally named their product Suyu. And made a big point like, well, Nintendo can't sue us because we're not using any of their stuff. And it took less than a week.
Yeah,
for their stuff to be ripped down.
The mistake in that thinking is assuming that, first of all, Nintendo needs legitimate legal claim, which they don't, to legally threaten you. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they do or don't have legitimate legal claim.
Right.
More and more data has been coming out, and there have been questions about it. But here's the thing. They're a big, giant corporation.
Yeah.
They don't need to have any legal ground to stand on to financially destroy you.
Right.
That's just how it works.
Now, if they wanted to win in court, that's another question. But if all
who's gonna take them?
Yeah, if their goal is just to wreck your finances, they got that.
Atari's Tempest 3000 is getting a reissue on the Nuon. Just remind me what the Nuon is again.
So the Nuon was a DVD player that could play video games.
Oh no, it's as bad as I thought it was.
And Tempest 3000 is one of the very few Nuon exclusives. And it is still exclusive to the Nuon. And when they did the Llamasoft documentary thing recently that Digital Eclipse was involved with, they had said that they had wanted to include Tempest 3000 as one of the games on there since, it's developed by Llamasoft.
Yeah.
But emulating the Nuon would have been such an undertaking that they just didn't. So at least it's being reissued now. So both of the people who still own Nuon DVD players,
there you go,
can now buy Tempest 3000 and not spend exorbitant prices.
The Nuon is going to go up on eBay. Everyone get ready.
It already did.
Halo. Oh no. Halo 2 is added to OG Xbox Live replacement Insignia.
So if you want to get your Halo 2 multiplayer on and
then
don't want to use the current readily available re-release.
Yeah, then it's available.
Yeah.
Star Wars Battlefront Collection or Classic Collection, whatever they have named it. The game that I don't want to see I showered praise on it, but I was like, yeah, it's fun. Apparently used animations from a fan mod, didn't credit the fan. The fan called them out on it in early trailers, and they said, no, we didn't actually do that. But then they released the game, and they did.
Yeah, but only on some platforms.
Because fuck the people that did the actual work, right? We're EA. EA, right? Yeah.
No, it was Aspire.
No. Aspire.
Yeah.
Aspires. But didn't EA publish it?
No.
Don't they publish all the Star Wars?
No.
Really? I don't know why I'm thinking EA is
EA
publishing Star
had
Wars
the
games.
exclusive rights to Star Wars for a while there. They no
That's
longer
what
do.
it is.
But no, the weirdest part is that they included this on some consoles and not on others. So clearly they realized at some point they needed to remove it, but didn't put that memo in all of the different releases of the game.
Yeah. So now at the end user experience, they're going to make, if they did remove it, they're patching it to make the game actively worse.
Yeah, but more accurate to the original.
Yeah, I think what they should do is probably just credit the modders in the fucking credits of the game.
Right?
Or pay the guy. That'd be even better, right?
Yeah.
But from what I can tell about the games industry, they don't even pay the actual employees.
Right.
So, Modern Retro Time has announced the NES Hub, an adapter that uses the previously mysterious and unused expansion slot on the NES on the bottom there.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about this. Already they have shown off that it can work as a 4-player adapter, so you don't need to have an external 4-player adapter. It can work for Bluetooth controllers, so that you can directly sync Bluetooth controllers without a receiver plugged in. It can adapt Super NES controllers to work on the system, and they believe that they're going to be able to get an adapter to let you play FDS games through it in a somewhat native FDS mode.
Sony is pausing production on the PSVR 2 due to backlogged supply.
Oh, no.
So I'm so upset. There was discussion in the chat earlier in the week of people talking about the PS5 Pro and basically being like, hey, you know, the PS5 Pro is coming out and there were questions of what supply is going to be like, and there were people arguing. I want to say it was Guy that was like, yeah, I believe in their ability to meet supply. Yeah. You know, and I was, and this news just makes me lose even more hope that could possibly happen. Like, there's no way it meets supply. Well, they're not even meeting supply on existing products.
Well, no, the problem with this one isn't they're not meeting the supply. It's that they have too much supply.
Oh, I read it as the opposite in my head, but I said it correctly. So maybe Guy's right then. Maybe I'm full of shit, and the PS5 Pro will be backlogged in supply, and there'll be plenty of them.
Now, this one, when the PSVR 2 first came out, it was flying off the shelves. They couldn't keep it in stock. And now they have too many of them, and they can't sell them. And so now they're suddenly talking about, well, what if we made it PC compatible and it works as a PC headset? And,
that's ridiculous. Then it's not built into their walled garden.
Right? So
they couldn't possibly do that.
So there is a chance that the PSVR 2 may receive PC compatibility soon, whereas then it'll be a more useful device.
That would be nice.
Right?
That would be nice. All right, the next news I'm going to read and understand in the correct order.
Maybe.
I like that I read it correctly in my head, just heard the opposite of what I said.
Just inverted it.
Konami released a documentary video about Metal Gear narrated by David Hayter. Never mentions Kojima one time. Not one time.
On the one hand, that's pretty shitty because he is somewhat pivotal in the series.
Saturn, if he was pivotal, he'd be in the documentary. So,
but on the other hand,
point Konami.
Fuck Kojima.
It seems like such a bizarre art house take to create a documentary about something and never mention the guy that basically spearheaded the project.
Yeah, it's a very Konami thing to do.
Man.
They did bring back David Hayter, though, so props to that.
So, yeah, good for that. Hopefully he got paid for his time. That's something. You know, poor guy was Solid Snake for years, and they're like, what if we just got... fucking what's his face, and he grunted twice, and that was all the dialogue he had in the game.
I'm wondering if this is evidence that it was in fact Kojima himself who explicitly wanted Kiefer Sutherland and kicked David Hayter off of the games.
Yeah, that wouldn't shock me.
Yeah,
that wouldn't shock me. GOG is partnering with Amazon Luna to allow players to stream GOG games over cloud gaming, which is something I'll never use ever, but is cool, and I like having the option.
I was testing all the cloud services on my Linux laptop last night because, you know, there's more games available that way. Mm-hmm. And GeForce Now worked fine. I was able to play several of my Xbox Game Pass games via GeForce Now. Xbox Cloud streaming works fine as long as you have a controller. And PS Remote Play works fine, and Luna worked fine. However, my entire Luna library is just whatever it could see from my Ubisoft account, which is nothing I care about.
Right. And finally, new Steam Families beta allows family members to play different games at the same time.
Previously, so happy about this.
Steam Family would not let if people sharing games via their family service both be playing any games, even if they're different games at the same time. So, like, if I'm playing this game and my kid logs on and is playing a different game, it'll boot me out,
kick someone off,
or
prevent
say,
them
hey,
from logging in.
Yeah, and so finally, it actually functions as an actual family sharing thing.
It's so nice because I've been sharing my account with my mom so she could play through the Final Fantasy games and stuff.
Right. So she's got to call you on the phone and be like, "I'm gonna play Final Fantasy 4."
Yeah.
Be like, okay.
And it had gotten to the point to where I was avoiding using Steam because I didn't want to kick her off of a game. And when I did use Steam, I would open up my friends list first to see if she was playing a game. And it was getting exhausting, and now I don't have to care about it anymore. I just start a game.
There you go. Which brings us to the topic at hand.
Yes.
Which is Ys, the Oath in Felghana, which is the 7th or 8th, somewhere around there, major release in the Ys series, but is also Ys 3, but also isn't Ys 3, which we'll explain.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
This was developed and published by Falcom, Western localization by Xseed. Came out on PC in Japan on the 30th of June 2005, internationally in March 2012. There was a PSP release in 2010 in all regions.
Yep.
There was a Switch port of, I think, just the PSP release in Japan.
No, it's a brand new port.
Oh, it's a new port?
Yep.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
That came out in Japan April 2023, and then there's a PS4, PS5 release of, I think it's the
Switch
same
port, yeah.
same version, in May of this year, upcoming, 2024. As far as first encounters, this is kind of a weird one for me because I do try to finish games for the show.
Yeah.
But I ran out of time before my hand surgery.
It happens.
And this is a relatively intense action game
That is true, yeah.
that I was playing on Steam Deck, which is a relatively heavy and
system,
large. I have learned I can sort of like cradle my Nintendo Switch in my right hand and sort of crab claw the joystick with my left hand, which is what I've been doing.
Have you tried getting a tongues only controller for your Switch?
But there was no hope of me playing Ys. I played through a chunk of it, but I wasn't able to finish it in time. And
How far did you get, you think?
I like a third of the way through.
But which area did you get to? Do you remember?
I think a little ways past the mountains. First time you go to the mountains.
The Snow Mountain area?
Yeah.
Oh, then you're most of the way through, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So I got a good chunk into it. But I was also running into technical issues that I was struggling with, and that set me behind, and that bumped me up against my surgery date. Oh. And some of them I never fully resolved.
That's so weird.
And so I guess we'll talk about that more in the gameplay section because that's where it affected me.
Right.
But I did try really hard. It just didn't. I didn't have the time in the day.
Yeah.
And then they cut my hand open, Saturn. They cut me. They got a marker and they drew on me and showed me where they would cut me.
That feels like a torture technique.
Yeah. So, what about you? I'm guessing you started playing it from within the womb.
Yeah, within the womb.
Because it's an Ys game.
Yeah. No, I had after E6, I had gotten back into the series, but then I also got unemployed, so I couldn't buy a whole lot of games. So I didn't get the PSP version immediately. I didn't end up getting it until it was on clearance. And by that point, I had mostly gotten tired of having to use my PSP because it was a later release on the system. And so I didn't really get around to playing the game until the Western PC release on Steam. But I really dug on it because it uses the E6 engine, which I'm a big fan of.
Just kind of go over Ys 3 here for me, so that so we can contextualize Oath and Felghana.
Yeah.
Because I guess you would call it a remake.
It is a remake, yes.
Or maybe even
a reimagining.
I want to say reimagining, but I'm on the fence about it. But it also kind of definitely is, but also sort of feels like it isn't. It's very weird.
Yeah.
So go over Ys 3 for us.
Yeah, if we ever get to Ys 4, that'll be the weird one. This one is relatively straightforward. So Ys 3, just real quick, was developed or released in July 89 on PC 88. It was later ported to 7 other platforms over the next 2 years. It was not a top-down action RPG like the first 2 games. It was entirely side view, similar to Zelda 2. And while the music and visuals and story and everything were regarded very well for the time, the gameplay was somewhat divisive. Most notably because all the different platforms had different physics and hit detection, and also there were no iframes. So if you took damage and the enemy still sat on top of you, you just kept taking damage until you die. So there was some issues with the original game that made it pretty divisive.
I did play a little chunk of the PC Engine port.
Okay, yeah.
Of this,
man,
just to
that flicker on that port,
just to see what was up, to see like how faithful of a remake is this, and you know what's going on with it, and it was rough.
Yeah, and the PC Engine port especially is rough because it's based almost directly on the PC 88 version.
Yeah.
Flaws and all. If you want to play original Ys 3 at some point, I recommend the Genesis version. Its localization is a little wonky. It always calls herbs harbs. But otherwise it is it has less technical issues than the other versions of the game that I've found.
Yeah. Well, let's talk development on Oath and Felghana specifically then, and then how that came about.
So, there was kind of a lull in the Ys series following Ys 5. The series kind of didn't die, but it went to sleep for a while. But then Falcom had re-released Ys 1 and 2 on modern PCs in the late 90s, and that kind of reinvigorated it, so they made a sequel finally, which was Ys 6 Ark of Napishtim. We did a whole episode on that.
And it was, I loved that game.
Yeah,
it was
a great game.
Fantastic game, yeah.
And the success of that game led to them wanting to not just make new games, but potentially re-release other games in the series. And they were just going to do straight re-releases or remakes like they did with 1 and 2. But when examining Ys 3, they decided maybe that's not the best idea with how divisive the game was.
Yeah.
So they remade it from scratch using the engine used for Ark of Napishtim. And they took the story of Ys 3 with some plot twists, took some remixed music from the original, and released it as effectively a new game. And it was successful enough that they later released it on PSP. And then when the PSP version was coming out was when it was finally getting a Western release. So Xseed acquired the rights to release the game in English-speaking territories, and they wanted to get it out as quickly as possible because, again, this was the later years of the PSP, and they didn't want this to be stuck until after the console died. So they just bought a fan translation. And then they cleaned up the fan translation. They added some voice acting. But while they paid the person who did the literal translation of the text from Japanese to English, they didn't pay anyone else involved in the fan translation project. And that led to some controversy within the community. There was a lot of back and forth about whether or not this was a shady business practice and whether they should receive any money for their work. And however, the guy who was making the biggest stink about it, the guy who had kind of decompiled the game to put the translation in there, is kind of a giant asshole. So there was two sides to the story. And then 2 years later, they used that same translation for the PC release, which allowed that version to be released in Western markets for the first time. And that was nearly identical to that previously released fan translation. So it's there's some controversy around the translation, but it's been long enough now that I think most people have forgotten that part. And it's I can't even find any information about this controversy on Wiki or pages like that. I had to go back and
just remember it.
I had to dig through old web forums that I read 15 years ago. So, but yeah, it was a thing.
So you put in there that they added voice acting.
True, for the PSP release and more recently for the PC version.
And I'm going to say that what I heard, I'm not sure legally should be defined as voice acting.
I found some reviews for this on the PSP that call it some of the best voice acting in games yet.
And then this PC port, I was playing it, and it was I had to turn it off.
It's
I was
the same
embarrassed.
voice acting.
Is it?
Yes, it's the same.
I was embarrassed
PSP and PC.
So here's the thing. My wife has very prominent ADHD, and she's medicated for it. Yeah. And a big symptom of ADHD is really super hyper-focusing on things. And what that means is she's really good at hyper-focusing on things, and you cannot disrupt her. Yeah. You have to almost go over there and shake her and be like, hey, because she gets so focused on stuff.
Yeah.
So for her to find, I can do just about anything I want. And not only will she not be distracted by me, she won't even notice me.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
And even she was like, what the fuck is going on with these people's voices? And she was like, what are you And I wasn't even on the TV. I was across the living room playing on a low volume in handheld mode on my deck. And she was like, what the fuck are you listening to? This is horrible. Now I was like, I know.
You had mentioned in the chat how bad it was, but I didn't remember there being a problem with the voices. But I played it before the voices were added to the PC release. So I went back and replayed the game for the show, and by default, it turned on the voices, and I got maybe an hour and a half into the game before I was like, I have to turn this off. This is unbearable.
They're so bad.
I mean, it's clearly some of the best voice acting work that's happened to date, according to contemporaneous reviews.
It was, I don't know, maybe we just don't have ears for voice acting. I sometimes I wonder, I'm like, you and I are both years removed from anime watching.
True.
And listening to, stereotypical anime voices.
Yeah, but I play a lot of other Japanese games that have that same
That's
kind
true.
of voice acting.
Yeah.
Including
That's
ones
true.
by this same company that are better.
The point I was trying to make, I think, was just like maybe this is where, because I mean, Japanese RPG, not that this is a JRPG, but it is an RPG and it is Japanese.
Yeah.
Voice acting is often, there's a lot of crossover with anime voice
True,
acting,
yeah.
and I imagine a lot of it uses the same kind of pools and stuff. I was going to say maybe you and I are just so far removed from how that market has changed that it's just unfamiliar to us. But yeah, you do play a ton of JRPGs still with voice acting.
Yeah, I do.
So,
And this is just
I don't fucking know. It was so bad. I was like, I muted it entirely.
Yeah,
I was like, this is the worst.
It's really painful.
I guess we can get into story.
Okay, yeah.
Now, granted, I didn't experience a lot of it. I did find the story in this game because I played E6. We played it for the show,
Yeah, yeah.
and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was outstanding.
Yeah.
I still highly recommend the game.
Absolutely.
I found the story in this game dramatically less compelling.
Well, it is
it is
written
older,
20
yeah.
years before.
I find the characters a lot less compelling.
Yeah.
It like in Napishtim, I was legitimately interested. I was enthralled. I was like, this is really good. This feels very, very definitely of its era. The
Yeah.
story does.
One thing I will give credit to this remake over the original is because you only ever have the one town to visit.
Yeah.
You've got the cast of characters who live in the town who you meet, and if you go back and talk to them regularly throughout the game, not during story events, just at random times, things that you will have done trigger them to get new dialogue, so you can learn more about them in that world. And I will give credit to that because it does flesh out each of the individual characters a little more, but the story relevant characters don't get as much development as some of these NPCs do, which I think it's because they didn't want to break too far from that original story, but maybe they could have used a little more development on that.
There are some kind of interesting story bits, but the actual primary story, at least again as much as I experienced, was just really
And a lot of the interesting parts of the story don't happen until the very end either, which doesn't help.
Yeah. So there were some side quests that were interesting. Like there was one side quest where you basically, there's a main bad guy and you end up going into the castle that they serve at because you saved some little boy that lived in that castle.
And I forget to do that every time I play the game.
Like that one was kind of fun because they're like, you basically go to like one of the in-game areas where the main bad guys are and they're like, what the fuck are you doing here? Get out. And I don't know if it was really like good story, but it was funny. Like it was interesting story, Let's go over characters. You have Adel, you have Dogi, who are your primary protagonist and his punchy
crushing sidekick.
And then you have Elena, and I'm glad that you pointed out in the notes how creepy she's treated in this game.
Yeah,
because she's a child, and these Adel and Dogi are presumably grown men.
Yeah, they're in their 20s at this point.
Who've been traveling there, and they come home, and there's like as much as you can insinuate leering at a 17-year-old is what is going on. Yeah,
mostly on Dogi's part.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's just kind of like, that's kind of gross feeling, The dialogue you put in here, Elena, I'm 17 now. Dogi, man, you sure are. Like,
that's so awkward.
Gross, man.
Yeah. Like, and there's a bit where Dogi's like, man, it sure would be nice to get together with the hometown friend, but who am I kidding? She'll definitely go for you. Like, what the fuck is all this dialogue?
And Adel's like a grown-ass man who could not fucking care any less than he's like, whatever, It was just kind of weird. And I think what was weird about it was that you can do this story beat normally.
Yes.
That you can have a story beat that's like, oh, I remember her being a kid and she's grown into a beautiful young woman.
Yeah.
Like that's an okay, normal story beat to have.
Right.
The surprise as someone who has blossomed into,
adulthood.
Or is at 17 blossoming into adulthood. In appreciating, that transformation without being creepy and weird.
Yeah. Because
basically placing bets on who's going to sleep with her. I don't know.
They go beyond the line several times, relatively early in the game.
Oh, yeah, immediately.
Yes.
Like, they run into her, and literally 2 minutes later, he's in the bar, like, she'd probably go for you.
Yeah, it's just so awkward.
Like, man, that hits weird.
Yeah.
That in the whole time in my head, I was like, they probably aged her up for the translation, too. I feel like that.
No, she was 17 in Japan as well.
All right, well, there's small saving grace. So that was strange.
Yeah.
Now, as far I don't nothing really ever happens, right? I guess
No,
just like
no, like
you know,
at the end, there's
doughy-eyed stares at one another.
yeah,
is basically
yeah. At the end, there's some implications that she is falling for Adol, and Adol decides he wants to, love his sword and run off like he always does. So
right.
nothing important.
There does seem to be there's this sort of. I wanted to call it like a James Bond quality to these games where there's always the female love interest that like Adol never goes for because he always wants to go back in the world of adventure. But I don't think that's a fair comparison because James Bond does sleep with all the women.
It's true.
So I don't know what a better comparison would be.
The implication in some of the games is that Adol is saving himself for Fina, the girl from, or not for Fina, the girl from the second game. Crap, I can't think of her name all of a sudden. And so he's waiting until he goes back to that starting area to run into her again.
Yeah.
But that never happens either. So
yeah.
But as a character, Elena is the orphaned young lady who is raised by the town. That's basically
and I feel like I remember in E6 there was a young female character that kind of fell
for Adol.
Fell for Adol, but the game very much framed it as like a young crush on an older individual.
Yeah, there was.
It's something that was not. Nobody was talking creepy about her behind her back. It was just like a young girl that was like, having a crush on an older person, like that. The same way that like kids have crushes on like teachers when they're in high school and crap,
or celebrities, or
celebrities. Like it felt more like that, than it did
this.
This was like, no, that's too far.
Yeah,
that's the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's all obviously very delicate ground, but it felt.
But this was not the way to walk that delicate ground.
No, not at all. Fire us through the rest of the story. I don't think we need to cover every major beat, but just kind of take us briefly through.
So, the main story beat. So, Felghana is Dogi's homeland. And Adol and Dogi went there because they heard there was some danger. So they get to Dogi's hometown of Redmont. And they reunite with Elena, who is 17 now. Mm-hmm. And boy, is she.
God damn it. God damn it.
And they learn that...
Like, in my head, I was like, is Dogi like 17 or 18? Like,
no, he's in his mid-20s, if I remember right.
How old... Because I was like, that must be the case.
No, because Dogi, I believe, is supposed to be a couple years older than Chester, and he hung out with Chester when they were kids. And Chester is Elena's older brother. But he is missing now. And so Adol and Dogi are trying to investigate what's going on in Felghana and why there's monsters all of a sudden. And they learn about Count McGuire, who's the corrupt ruler of the nearby area. And then you also encounter this character Dularn, who is this shrouded figure that seems to be testing Adol's abilities, but no explanation is given.
Yeah.
So you help the townsfolk for a while. The priest goes missing because he's trying to investigate some local ruins, and the castle's bishop had come into town, and he and the nun in town tell Adol to go look for the priest. And
I got through all this.
Yeah, and when you find the priest, Chester finds you both. He arrests the priest and then throws you into a volcano.
Yep, I remember that. And I was like, I guess he dies now. And then you just land in the bottom of a volcano and you're like, oh, I guess I'll fight my way out of this fucking volcano now.
That's how it works.
It's shit. So weird.
So you get your way out of the volcano, and then somebody asks you to go look at the abandoned mine shaft. And you go to the abandoned mine shaft, and there you hear the voice of Genos, who is a warrior who had defended Felghana many, many years ago against a malicious entity called Galbalan. And he sealed Galbalan in 4 statues because he couldn't defeat him. And 2 of those statues Adol already found, and he's told that a 3rd one is in the abandoned mines. So he goes and he gets a statue. And then he follows Dogi up to the Elder Mountains, which is the snowy area, to meet Dogi's mentor, Bearheart. and that's where he learns the legend of Genos and gets his 4th statue. And then Adol is inexplicably trapped in a landslide so that Dogi can break walls again.
This is right about this is where I stopped.
Okay. Yeah. So you escape the ice cavern, and Adol and Dogi are confronted by Chester, who says he needs all the statues. And Dogi's like, nah, I see what's going on. You're not really betraying the town. What's really up? And Chester admits that he's just seeking revenge against Count McGuire, not working for Count McGuire, because Count McGuire slaughtered the people of nearby Genos Island, which is where Chester and Elena are from, and that he needs the power of the statues to destroy McGuire. And when Adol and Dogi say no, Chester then stabs Dogi in the chest and tells Adol that he can either immediately get care for Dogi or he can fight him. And so Adol gives up the statue so that he can get Dogi to help.
Yeah.
Then he returns to Redmont to discover the town is under attack by zombies. And so he goes to Valstein Castle to confront Chester and stop the zombie soldiers. And then Elena also left for Valstein Castle, so you run into her there. And Chester has locked away all the innocent civilians in the castle, including members of the royal family and the bishop and Elena, to ensure their safety, because he's not after them. He just wants the Count.
Right.
And so Adol finds him confronting McGuire already, but Elena stops Chester because he doesn't want him to become pure evil.
Of course.
And this is where the first change from the story of the original game happens. Elena convinces Chester to spare McGuire, but then Bishop Nicholas shows up to reveal he has been manipulating McGuire the whole time, and that he is actually Garland, the right hand of Galbalan.
Right, who you fought outside the first town, and then he got trapped in a time thing, and then you fight him later at the end of Final Fantasy.
Right. Yeah, that's a different Garland.
Oh, okay.
That one cares more about chaos. This one cares about Galbalan.
Right.
And so Dularn shows up again, who is that shrouded guy that was testing you, and he knocks out Chester, and then Garland just destroys Adol, and then the Garland and Dularn disappear with Elena to Genos Island to try to resurrect Galbalan. And so you head there, and then when you're at Genos Island, Adol finds Sister Nell, the nun from the town, who reveals that she was Dularn all along.
Oh!
And then you kill her, and then you kill Garland, and then you stop Galbalan, and everybody is safe. And then Chester sacrifices himself, and then Adol and Elena go home, and everybody's okay.
Yay! So, not the most riveting.
No,
there's some twists. They add some twists.
For a 1989 game, it's okay.
It's for 1989, and they add a little bit of complexity. There's some texture added to the story. Let's talk presentation, because I don't know. For a game like this that is like you've said several times, a remake of a game from the 80s.
Right.
I don't think you're showing up for the story, nor do I think you should show up for the story. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
This is, like we mentioned before, built on the E6 engine. It feels a lot like it. It looks a lot like it.
Yep.
Honestly, I think it does it a bit of a disservice because it just feels like a little bit lesser than E6 in a lot of regards.
Yeah, that's how I felt the first time I played it, but I've talked to several people since then who say that this is the superior game in every way.
Really?
Yeah.
I just
it seems to be popular opinion, especially among newer Ys fans. That seems to be the popular opinion.
The music is good.
Yeah.
I had mine on the PC-88 version for most of it because it was a little too rockin'.
I love the butt rock.
Like, I would just be in a cavern just sort of running to the right, and it's like, I'm like, all right, maybe relax a little bit.
I love all that. I have always loved Falcom's penchant for leaning on butt rock for some reason. It's great. I love all the completely superfluous electric guitar they use, and this game has plenty of it.
It's a little over the top. We mentioned the voice acting, so just avoid that. And I guess that kind of leaves the gameplay here. This is mechanically very similar to E6.
Yeah.
There's a lot of enemy juggling. You've got different types of magic, fire, wind, and earth that you swap between, that you're sort of leveling up throughout the game. And you've also got armor and weapons that you're always replacing and then tempering and improving at the blacksmith. So it's kind of that same sort of progression system as E6.
The big change was the boost gauge, which I forget to use 90% of the time. Which just temporarily boosts your stats. The PSP version added a double boost that first does area-wide damage when you activate it and also regenerates your health during the boost. But the PC version does not have that.
I do like that this one, because E6 you just had items that you used, just like in a Zelda game. This one, enemies would just drop items that would heal or boost your attack or boost your magic or whatever, and they would just kind of multiply and have little timer bars that ran. I liked that. I thought it lent itself well to the gameplay. It felt very arcadey, and it kept me from having like head down in the menus using items and stuff, and like checking how many of this thing do I have, how many of that. You know, I just got to go.
Yeah, and the PC port of E6, the current version, added a Nightmare difficulty, and on Nightmare, the items work the same way. So you never have to go to the menu, you just immediately heal when you touch an item that drops.
I like that a lot, because for such an action-oriented game that's playing constant butt rock, it seems to really want you to be constantly throwing yourself against waves of enemies.
Full speed at all times.
I think that helps with that. There's also the experience multiplier, and it's just kind of a if you've played later Ys games, then it's going to be pretty familiar. I think from this little bracket of Ys games, right? The PSP Ys era.
The Napishtim engine games, which are Ark of Napishtim, this, and Ys Origin.
This sort of family within the Ys universe. Yes. I ran into issues with the game. I was having constant jumping issues, and then I reached a point where I had to double jump to get to the mountains, and I couldn't make the jump.
That's really
In researching, it turns out that this is an issue with frame rate, and I was running it at, I think, about 2,400 and something FPS.
And that's not native?
No, I just recently bought a new computer, and so I had to spend, it was a good hour or two opening the separate program that you have to use to configure the graphics options in the game, tweaking different VSync and frame rate related settings, going back in the game, testing, coming back out, going back in, jumping some more, testing, coming back out. Finally, when I got it working between the configuration program and the NVIDIA control panel and manual VSync options, it worked, but it was extremely stuttery, and my frame timing was totally thrown off.
That's weird.
Which made the game way more difficult.
I played the game between my Steam Deck docked to my television and my my desktop. And
Steam Deck, it ran great.
Yeah, it seemed to run perfectly fine on both of mine. I'm running a 3070 on this desktop, and it seemed to run no problem.
And so, looking around online, apparently it's pretty common, and it's not super well documented or known why or known on what hardware it does and doesn't occur, or even what the fix. Because the recommended fix is, just go tweak settings related to or that could affect frame rate, kind of back and forth until it works. Is kind of the recommendation.
It's crazy that a 19-year-old Windows XP game is having these issues on
I know. I was
devices.
also confused, but that did slow my progress. And so I just wanted to mention it. So if you're playing and you're like, shit's weird, and I can't quite find any like a fix for it, because I think I'm very spoiled these days. Like, as soon as a PC game has an issue, I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna go to Mod Nexus and download the mod that fixes this then. And this was just like a 5-year-old, however
forum
old
thread or whatever
forum thread of someone like, I don't know, just fuck around with some of these things, and it might fix.
Nice.
And I never got it quite running correctly.
That's a shame.
And so I did have those issues with it. But gameplay wise, I like it. It's fast. It's intuitive. Maybe they add more complications later, but I had less difficulty with some of the more complicated jumping maneuvers once I got it correctly syncing with my TV. than I did in E6. In E6, I felt like they had some of these like weird running jumps that were kind of really complicated.
Some of the platform puzzles in E6 are really obnoxious, and this game doesn't seem to have those.
I did kind of miss the sort of timing mini game of the magic items.
Yeah, the one platforming issue that I have in Felghana is there are several rooms that will drop you into another room if you fall in a pit. And often you end up like not like on another floor, but like 3 rooms over from where you currently are. Yes. And unless you know what the relation between those rooms are, you could end up completely lost.
Oh, I spent a lot of time lost. Now, granted, it was very fun because there's a lot of hacking and slashing to be done, but there's a lot of falling in rooms, going, oh shit, going the wrong direction, forgetting.
Yes.
That kind of thing. I was playing on very easy mode, so I did have no fall mode available.
Yeah.
I also appreciated the very ample and easy to use fast travel system that helped a ton. I don't remember if E6 had fast travel. Did it?
The current PC version does. You can get the Wings of Alma that let you teleport.
Okay. Were they a limited item or something?
No, once you get it, you have it.
I guess I'm just misremembering. So that was nice. It was like if I hadn't played E6 yet, I think I would have appreciated this more. And I would say maybe someone that went in to play E6 and you're like, I don't know, man, some of this, the controls are a little complicated and weird because they are. Like you've got like weird timings and things. It's a relatively complex game to control.
The dash jump in E6 is especially annoying to pull off. Yeah,
if you bounced off of E6 because of the weird timing attacks and the dash jump and you're like, I just want to hit things with a sword, I think this would absolutely be up your alley.
Yeah.
Because it's just kind of E6, but a little simpler and a little more streamlined. I just think it loses a little bit of its hooks along the way for me.
Yeah. Now I do want to mention PC Gamer's review because this has become a meme in the Ease community.
Please do,
because PC Gamer rated the game a 56 out of 100.
Okay.
Because they said the first boss is basically impossible.
So hold on. A game that they believe is unable to be completed, they gave an almost 62?
Yeah. So they said the first boss is basically impossible to be completed because the only way to beat it is to go out of your way to find an invisible chest to find an item the game gives you no indication of. Now, you've played this game some, and I immediately found this chest because it's not invisible. It's semi-translucent, and there's a bunch of like signals pointing towards it. But also, like 2 screens before that chest is a giant infographic pop-up that tells you what the contents of that chest are going to do. But even if you miss that chest, the boss isn't that hard. But also lower the difficulty if you have to.
In the version of the game I was playing, which maybe it was different than theirs, I could at any time hit the pause menu and read through the manual that the game has built in that details how to use all of the different mechanics within the game.
During bosses, you can't pause, if I remember right.
Well, after the boss kills you, you're no longer... Oh, I guess because if you hit retry...
you're just
right back in the boss battle.
So, yeah. But other than that, no, you can pause it any other time. Yeah.
How weird.
Yeah, it's become a meme in the community because of just how baffling that review is. And people gave him shit in the comments on the review when it came out. And since then, it's just, it's so dumb.
It's strange. I will say these games can get a little weird. Some of the mechanics are a little weird.
Yeah.
I don't quite think they're like, that's a little. Someone was on a time crunch. I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and say like someone got the game 2 days before embargo and was like, "Oh fuck, I need to cover this whole game."
Yeah,
found an excuse to eject her seat out of there and just took it.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I can think. Let's talk Legacy. Because, they're still making these games. I don't know if you know this, Saturn.
I've heard,
yeah.
New one's right around the corner, too.
He's 9 already, I think.
East 10 is about to come out.
He's 10 already, I think.
I believe the Japanese release of East 10 already released. Yes, it did, because the Steam release of the Asia version is just getting lambasted.
No.
It is not good.
Oh, they pulled that, didn't they?
Well, they pulled all of them,
Okay.
the Western and the Asian release at first, because they had the same name and it was causing a conflict in Steam system.
No.
And then they reissued them both, and now they have pulled the Asian release again because it just isn't functioning.
That's
But
rough
the
stuff.
the Western release doesn't officially release until later this year, though.
Okay. Well, tell us about the legacy of Oath and Felghana then.
So like
More broadly.
like I mentioned earlier, Ease Origin also uses the same engine, the Napstem engine. It is further refined, and it has 3 playable characters in it as well. So you can play through the game as Yona, and then play it again as Hugo, and then play it again as a hidden character. Then you have Ease Memories and Salsata, which was the next remake in the series after this one. So Falcom is continuing the trend of remaking and reimagining old games in the series. And as you mentioned, they're still making games. So
Yep. They still do them.
yeah.
As far as final thoughts, I do wish I'd had the time to finish this because it was a good time.
Yeah.
I know I feel like I keep comparing it to E6, and I do feel like it's a fair comparison to make.
It's the most obvious comparison.
And I don't want to sound like down on the game because I had a real good time with it. I think if I didn't have my technical issues, it would have really spurred me to push forward. I think because I ran into those, I really lost steam in a game that I had already felt like I didn't have as much steam in that I did in E6 at that point, if that makes sense. And it just kind of knocked me out of it. But I don't think that should be treated as a damning reception of it. I think it's very well done. I think it's streamlined. I think it's definitely the simpler, easier, more immediately engaging of the two games. Yes. And I think I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it for the like $2 it's almost always on sale for.
Right.
Like if you're like, hey, I want like a cool Zelda game with less or almost no puzzles, then here you go. You got Ease games. Go play them. They're out there.
You got that one puzzle that makes the first boss impossible, apparently. Then if you can manage that one.
But it's just like Napstem. It's good. It's not too long. It's fun. I wish the client itself was a little more updated. Maybe that would be the critique I would levy against it.
I think my recent playthrough of the game ended up at about 12-ish hours maybe, and that was with me doing some grinding because I wanted to get to level 60. So it's I do hear regularly from people who recently started the series, because there is a website, Digital MLS, that is kind of the definitive Ease fan site, and they have a play order which is either chronological or order of release, and if you play the chronological playthrough, you end up playing this one first of this engine. And I've found that a lot of the people that do that don't seem to enjoy Ark of Napstem nearly as much.
Napstem is definitely more plodding.
Yes.
It's slower. It's more invested in its own plot. It takes longer to get started, I feel like.
That's true.
Because Napstem, like, you wake up on a beach, and it's this whole thing. And this one, Doug is just like, hey, look, a 17-year-old. And then you're stabbing monsters, and that's it. You're basically in it immediately.
But as somebody who did play Napstem first, I love that game, and I also really enjoyed this game. I thought it was great. If I had any complaints, is that it didn't bring a whole lot new to the table.
I could see that.
But other than that, I still enjoy the game. Replaying it this last week was a blast. I still enjoy this series of Ease games, these 3, more than any of the more recent games. So if you started with the series with 8 or 9, like a lot of people have recently, I definitely recommend.
7's pretty different too, I feel like.
No, 7 and 8 and 9 all use the same game engine.
Okay.
So if you started with one of those more recent games, I say go back and try these. They definitely have a different feel. I like the solo Adol feel. It gives me that same feeling Zelda does about just being on an adventure and not being in a
these
group.
Ones always Ease, all the older Ease games, even the ones before this, because I guess you can really kind of categorize Ease into 3 chapters almost.
There's
everything
the bump fighting chapter, this chapter, the current chapter, and then the chapter in between the bump fighting and this that we don't talk about.
The original 2 chapters always feel very Zelda-y to me, except they take out all of the stupid fucking block pushing puzzles.
I love block puzzles.
I'm sorry you like the bad thing. but I don't. And I'm so glad. It's just like, oh, how do I solve this dungeon? Well, you stab things to the right. And if the door isn't there, you stab things to the left.
Sometimes you have to light torches on fire.
Sometimes you have to stab up or down too.
True.
So
yeah.
you stab it in 4 directions.
Yeah.
Just putting it out there. I would not hesitate to recommend this alongside Napstim. The only thing I would be hesitant about is which one to play first. I'm not quite sure. I for my money, I would say this one, then Napstim. But as you said, that doesn't always seem to land for everybody, and I think it depends on like what you wanted out of this. If you play this and you're like, oh, this is good, but I wish I had just a little bit more to chew on, then Napstim would be great. If you play this and you're like, oh, it's perfect, I don't think they should add anything as far as like weight or heaviness or complication, then I could see it going badly.
Yeah, and if you want to play them in the order that they originally released, it would be Napstim and then this and then Origin.
Yeah. And if you want to go to a cool website, we have a Patreon. At patreon.com/Retro Warriors, and there's all sorts of cool things there, like pictures of us in sunglasses with our backs to each other and our arms crossed, just looking like cool guys.
Is there?
No, but now we have to make. I said it was there, so now we have to go take that picture.
Shit.
So I guess we know what we're doing this weekend.
I'm working this weekend.
Well, I guess I'll be meeting you at work. to take this picture.
Show up at the factory at 3 a.m. I'll probably be there.
I'll get AI to do it. It's fine.
Good, perfect.
They'll be fun. They'll cover it. We want to thank our patrons for their very kind donations, starting with Chronolingua
and Grimoire Games,
The Stone Shooter,
Cenobi,
VJ,
Thomas J. of San Jose,
Domingo Carlo Martinez,
Nicholas Grind,
News Goose Clover,
and Ruark.
All gave us money, and you can give us money too. Any amount of money is great because we just like money and it's very useful and we use it for a lot of things. And we find that it's almost universally useful across buying food or games or electricity or water or housing,
or gambling,
or nachos at Chili's.
Yeah.
There's many things you can use money for. So if you would like to
crippling addictions.
If you would like to give us the gift of money, then do it.
We would welcome
please.
it.
I like that. I feel like when we first started doing Patreon, you were really gun shy about it, but now you're just like, yeah, the money's great. I love money. Like you're on board with it.
I'm just trying to play up the ridiculousness factor of it myself. After hearing a lot of patron pitches and a lot of media over the years, I've decided that I'm just going to lean into the ridiculousness.
The ones that always make me sad are the guilt ones where they want to make you feel bad.
You mean public radio?
I'm like, don't make me feel bad. Just be like, hey, man, if you got a couple bucks and this adds value to your day, that would mean a lot to us. You don't have to be like, well, without your support, our houses will burn down and our significant others will leave us.
I turn off the radio every time they're doing a pledge drive because I can't stand Ira Glass getting on there and guilting me. He's like,
you just feel so bad.
He just like, do you have $8? $8 can make a difference.
Do you have $8?
Or you could just go to Wendy's and destroy your local public radio station.
Jesus Christ. Maybe we need to get him. Maybe we'll get more money if we get Ira Glass on here guilting people.
Yeah, so we need
what do you
you
think
all
his
to
appearance fee is.
We need
right?
you all to donate money so that we can then pay for Ira Glass.
Yeah, so that we can get him to guilt you. That's the plan. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Hopefully it wasn't too bizarre. But we got another one of these to do. So we'll see you next week when shit's even weirder, I guess.
Hooray.
We're going to record it right now.
Yeah.
You're going to listen to it in the future.
Or not. Maybe you'll just back it up and chug them both at once.
Do it all at once. Yeah. Chug them both.
Chug
both those episodes. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.